Okay, let's talk about Sword and Shield. What's up with Rose? The president of the Macrocosmos conglomerate ended up being the bad guy. I know, no one saw that coming. While trying to save Galar from an energetic crisis, the chairman triggered the darkest day, almost destroying the region as the energy emitted by Eternatus, the legendary Pokémon he had awakened, caused wild Pokémon to Dynamax, becoming giant threats for the safety of everyone in the region. Thankfully, the player character and hub joined forces with Zacian and Zamazenta to stop Eternatus. But what if I told ya this story has many parallels with many religions and mythologies? What if I told you that the history of Galar is reflected in those myths? Yeah, there are some really deep designs and lore in these games. And that is why we are here today, to explore what's the symbolism behind the wolves, Eternatus and Rose. But before talking about the symbolism behind Rose, we need to understand the rest of this scenario. In the lead up to Sword and Shield, I made a couple of videos discussing the Norse, Greek and Kabbalistic inspirations I had noticed from the trailers. I was expecting the plot of the games to reflect the Norse story of Ragnarok, and while they do, there's a lot more which I wasn't expecting. To begin, we have to discuss the wolves, Zacian and Zamazenta. As I mentioned a while back, these Pokémon show elements from two sets of Norse mythological wolves. Their connection with swords and shields seems to be a nod to Geri and Freki, Odin's hounds who sit by his throne next to his weapons. They are also his companions in battle, another aspect that is present in the legendary wolves. They also are related to Skull and Hati. These two are pretty well known as the wolves who eternally chase the chariots of the sun and the moon. And when they reach them, that's the day Ragnarok begins, the Norse equivalent of the apocalypse. When this happens, their father Fenrir is freed from his chains and charges against Asgard to kill Odin. With all the Norse references throughout the Galar region, such as runes appearing carved into rocks, and Corbinite being similar to Hagen and Manen, Odin's traveling ravens, it is safe to assume that Game Freak had these wolves in mind when working on Zacian and Zamazenta. But of course, there's more. As the Pokédex entries for the legendaries and the history of Galar tell us, there were two youths who became kings after battling alongside Zacian and Zamazenta 3000 years ago, to stop the first darkest day in Galar's history. Those mighty heroes after the battle took a bath in Circhester, and Circhester is the key to understand the symbolism behind this region. Found in Circhester, the hero's bath is based after the Roman baths from a city located in the southern English county of Somerset, a city named Bath. How fitting. The hot springs were originally a shrine for the Britons, one of the Celtic tribes that populated the British Islands. But after the Roman Empire took over in the 1st century of the Christian era, a temple was built with elements of Roman architecture. Why did Game Freak choose this place for such a big role in Galar's history? It is related to another of the sources behind this region's lore, Romulus and Remus. If you look at the walls of the hero's bath, you can see what seems to be the carved figures of wolves. Obviously, Zacian and Zamazenta, but with this place being based after a Roman construction, these art pieces are most likely based after the most well-known Roman symbol, the she-wolf who nursed Romulus and Remus after they were abandoned in a river by order of King Amulius, who saw them as a threat as they were the sons of the god Mars. Once they grew up, Romulus and Remus became the mythical founders of Rome, but they disagreed about on which of the 7 hills they wanted to build the city. Conflict which ended once Romulus just straight out killed his brother. Maybe this is reflected in how the people of Galar believed there was only one hero fighting to stop the Darkest Day 3000 years ago. Okay, cool, the legendaries are based after the she-wolf, but that's not the end. You'll see, the lore of Galar is actually influenced by the origins of the Romulus and Remus myth. Sacian, Samacenta, Eternatus, the Darkest Day all show characteristics present in Proto-Indo-European mythology. Ancient cultures in Europe, the Middle East, and India are believed to be connected to each other through what is known as the Indo-European migrations, a process which started around the year 4000 BC, when cultures from the steppes around modern-day Ukraine migrated into multiple parts of the world, carrying with them their beliefs and symbols, and also absorbing new ones. And while we don't have written records of their religion, the reconstruction work made to understand it gave us some archetypes showing common tropes and characters that appear in multiple cultures, such as the Norse, Celtic, Greek, and even Judeo-Christian. Let me show you a concrete example. This is the Frank's casket, an ivory box made by Anglo-Saxons. This box shows images from multiple European myths as well as Christian iconography, like images of the three Magi, the Germanic hero Sigurd, and in the left panel we find Romulus and Remus being suckled by the she-wolf. But there's another wolf here, one who has been interpreted by archaeologists to be either one of Odin's wolves or Fenrir, the wolf from Ragnarok. The runic inscription found in this panel connects the Roman twins to a major Indo-European archetype known as the Divine Twins, who are either gods or demigods with strong links to war, healing, and sometimes they also are who drive the solar chariots, which might be why Game Freak decided to link them to wolves rather than the traditional horses from this archetype. The most well-known examples of this archetype are the Greek and Roman Castor and Pollux, also known as the Dioscuri. They are extremely linked to another pair of divine twins, Hengist and Horsa, the legendary twins who led the Anglo-Saxons in their invasion of Britain. Horsa would die during battle, leaving Hengist to become the king of Kent, according to the legends. So again, two brothers, one dies and the other becomes the sole ruler of a kingdom. This statue is getting more and more relevant by the minute. In the Dads, we not only find carvings showing the legendary wolves. In this other image, we can see a hexagon surrounded by another bigger hexagon. Those hexagons are most likely a reference to Eternatus, as that's the shape of the rocks around the Dynamax dens which emanate the energy of Eternatus from under the earth. This is the reason why Chairman Rose adopted the hexagon as a symbol of his corporation, which is a bunch of hexagons with two interlaced in the center, creating a third one. This symbol in particular reminds me of the Balknut, a symbol of interlaced triangles, which appeared in many Germanic cemeteries, accompanied by wolves and ravens, as a representation of Odin. But the important thing here is that the Balknut is linked to another symbol, this one of Indo-European/Proto-Celtic origin, the Triskelion. This motif is composed of a triple spiral, which is how Eternatus is represented in many places, be it the geoglyph from Tarfield, the hero's statue from Motostock, or the tapestry showing the arch from the Slumbering Weald, completing the Triskelion with two other circles, possibly referring to the walls. The Triskelion was closely related to the Germanic symbol known as the triquetra, a trefoil knot. Both of the symbols were adopted by Christian iconography to represent the Holy Trinity, and this interpretation was reworked into the trefoil, three overlapping rings that are common to find on Christian architecture, in what is known as a trefoil arch, similar to the one from the Slumbering Weald. And also the trefoil became the different symbols used to represent radiation, like the one that appears on the wishing stars. This is really intriguing, because arches are usually seen as an entrance to a different realm. You could call it a spiritual one, and Sashian and Samacenta are pretty much dead, resting as rocks, until the day they are awakened by the new darkest day, at the other side of the arch. And I find this really interesting, as it might be connected to Rose, and to the reason why his conglomerate is named Macrocosmos. A few months ago, I made a video explaining why I was expecting to see some references to the Kabbalah in these games. The Jewish Kabbalistic tradition has been a big source of inspiration to Pokémon for many generations. And in that video I mentioned how the map of Galar seemed to fit with the esoteric Kabbalistic tree of life. A diagram depicting the process of God's light being processed during creation. Everything starts with God's divine and pure light, before the 10 Sephiroth or spheres, ending in the last one, Malkuth, which is the physical reality. The starting town taking the place of Malkuth and Rose Tower doing the same with Ein Sof, the divine light where creation starts, parallels the journey of the Kabbalist, going up the tree from the physical world to the spiritual. Here is where the phrase "as above, so below" comes into play. Just like humans are said by Judeo-Christian tradition to be created in the image of God, alchemists and practitioners of Hermetism believe that the human, and this means the physical plane, reflects the processes from above, from the astral plane. This is understood as the microcosm reflecting the macrocosm. How does one reach the macrocosm? Going through the spheres, absorbing their light and wisdom, something which many esoteric groups such as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the Rosicrucian Order represented with a rose on a cross. Look, those are trefoils. The rose is the individual and its unfolding consciousness. The rose is the divine light of the universe, and the cross the temporal world of the earth. Thus, the rose becomes an axis mundi, a pillar connecting the different realms, a nexus between the astral, physical, and underworlds, just like the tree of life. Oh, and the astral world is basically a space, which is why it's represented by a planetary model that appears in the logos of many of Rose's companies. A great example of this is Dante's Divine Comedy. In Paradiso, Dante is visiting the highest point of the paradise and finds a rose made of divine light, where all the saints sit facing God, who is represented by 3 interlaced rings of light, a trefoil, just like the Macrocosmos logo. Rose, the guy who gives energy to all of Galar, is the mystic rose of light from paradise. And should I mention that God and the rose are found by Dante after crossing a river, just like the Rose Tower? Okay, I know what you're thinking. Where is Eternatus? And where is the underworld in the Axis Mundi of the games? Well, it's time to go down the abyss. Eternatus used to be resting in the underground of the region after falling down in a meteor. Why is this important? Cause the energy plant where its energy is being harvested is in Hammerlock. Following the Tree of Life, Hammerlock is located where the Shadow Sephiroth is placed in the tree. That meaning knowledge, a point above what is known as the Abyss, a space which separates the higher Sephiroth from the rest of the creation. What's up with the Abyss? In the biblical book of Psalms, it is mentioned that God, during creation, killed a giant serpent found in the Abyss, also known as the waters of the primordial sea. That giant serpent is named Leviathan. Name meaning something down the lines of the twisting one or the circular one, which is why many believe that Leviathan is supposed to be a serpent encircling the earth, a figure common to multiple cultures from around the Middle East, like the ones from Mesopotamia. So, a circular serpent who lives in the deep abyss. This abyss was interpreted as some sort of hell or underworld, which is why Leviathan also became a name for the devil, Satan. But there's another gigantic creature who appears in the biblical book of Job and the ancient Hebrew apocalyptic book of Enoch as a partner or rival for the Leviathan, the primal monster of the land, Behemoth. This duo was already inspiration for Groudon and Kyogre, but what are Sasha and Samacenta's signature moves? Behemoth Blade and Behemoth Bash. Oh, and did you know the book of Enoch talks about the fallen angels, like Satan, who fell down the earth creating hell, like Eternatus. And it also talks about demons and giants, who are also trapped in hell, aka Tartarus, waiting for the apocalypse. We can already see some similarities between the Leviathan and Eternatus, who is kind of a fallen angel buried underneath the region's surface, which acts as an underworld, joined with Macrocosm through the Axis Mundi Rose. This tradition of a god of creation battling a dragon serpent is another of the archetypes from Proto-Indo-European origin, a tradition known as the Chaoskampf, in which the creation god is sometimes replaced by a storm god or a hero representing culture. We can find some examples of this story in Mesopotamian and Egyptian mythology, but also in Norse mythology, where Jormungandr battles Thor at Ragnarok. Jormungandr is a serpent encircling the world tree, which is an axis mundi, and it was used by Game Freak as inspiration for Zygarde back in Gen 6. Also, Zygarde is identified with hexagons, just like Eternatus. During Ragnarok, Jormungandr and his brother the wolf Fenrir, Skoll and Hati's father, will attack the Asgardian gods with the help of the giants from Jotunheim. This is really similar to Greek mythology, where two groups of giants help the Greek god Zeus to overtake Olympus. These giants were imprisoned by Kronos in Tartarus, and they are the Cyclops and the 100-armed Hecatoncheires. And we just happen to have some Gigantamax forms who could be references to these giants. Also, they came from the underworld, in a similar way to how Dynamax happens because of the energy pouring from underneath the earth. But Zeus also has a Chaoskampf story, the story of the battle against Typhon. Battle which in some versions is part of the Gigantomachy, a battle against the giants for the control of Mount Olympus. Typhon is a giant, born from an egg, the son of Tartarus. Yeah, Tartarus is both a person and a place. He was described by various Greek poets like Hesiod as a dragon with multiple snake heads, just like Eternatus in its Eternamax form. Apollodorus of Athens describes him as a gigantic serpentine monster, and Nonus of Panopolis refers to Typhon as a poison-spitting viper, capable of spearing showers of venom from his throat. Yeah, that might explain the poison typing. There are many different creatures from Greek mythology who are linked to Typhon, like his children, the poisonous Hydra and Ladon, who were defeated by Hercules, as well as the sea monster Cetus, who was slain by Perseus. There are some other examples of this archetype on Greek mythology, but the interesting part is that all the heroes who fought the dragons were aided by the goddess Athena, a warrior goddess who was represented by the Helleborus genus of flowers that includes many flowers named rose, despite them not being actually roses, and also the olive tree. Her Roman name was Minerva. But when the Romans go to Britain, she got mixed with a Celtic goddess named Sulis, creating the figure of Sulis Minerva, who was worshipped in the Roman baths from Bath. I bet you didn't see that one coming. Oh, and Athena/Minerva fought during the Gigantomachy, and she faced a creature who is sometimes Typhon or sometimes his son Ladon, the giant Draco. She killed that dragon and threw him into the sky, where it became the constellation of Draco, known for its meteor showers, just like Eternatus. This is why you can learn Draco Meteor in the hero's path. You guys know who is the patron saint of England since the Tudor period, aka after the War of the Roses? Saint George, who in legend saved a town by killing a dragon who was demanding human sacrifice to the people of the town. And George is usually depicted as stepping on the dragon while holding his shield and either a lance or cross. This has many similarities with the statue from Moorstoke, but there's something else. Saint George's story has always been linked to the Chaoskampf, and being a Christian image, this takes us to the Book of Revelations, where the Leviathan and Behemoth appear again, now as a trio completed by Satan, who appears in the shape of a dragon. They and Satan's army of fallen angels will be defeated by an army of angels led by the archangel Michael, and this is represented in art like this. Yeah, it's uncanny. Not to mention that the Galarian Abyss is close to Hammerlock, and the entrance to the city is what is known as a Hellmouth, a Christian figure adopted from Anglo-Saxon art, which is considered to be the mouth of Leviathan or the devil swallowing the damned. The mouth is the entrance to hell, and many depictions of the Hellmouth show a battlemented castle entrance, like the one from Hammerlock. And the funniest thing about all of this is that the origin of the Hellmouth is this image of the Norse god Vidar killing the wolf Fenrir at the end of Ragnarok. But then, why all this Judeo-Christian symbolism? Maybe for the same reason they put next to the hero's bath some hotels with floor patterns representing Unknown, Pokémon heavily linked to Arceus, the creator, whose plates are infused with the power of defeated giants. But anyways, I still think we are missing one piece of the puzzle. Or are we? I'll come back with more information about that soon. But for now, that's it. Hope that wasn't a lot to process, cause it really felt like a lot to me. But still, it was really fun to make this video, so thanks for coming to my TED Talk, and see you soon.